Men are dumb with feelings.
Where's that from?
Well, it's the season 2 of And Just Like That. I watched it last night.
Oh, yeah.
Fabulous, by
I
the way.
have to watch that too.
Yeah, it's really good. But there's amazing conversation between Jackie and Kari in her apartment about how men have evolved and we can't objectify men anymore in 2023 and how they have feelings, but they're still dumb about feelings.
Right. So that is exactly why we're doing this podcast, to change that preconception. So without further ado, we're going to dive straight into our feeling this week, which is Pride. And it just happens to be Pride Month.
Yeah, June is traditionally Pride Month, which is brilliant. And actually, I really want to come back to why the word pride or the feeling pride is associated with the equality movement. And of course, it used to be called gay pride, and now that would be LGBTQ+. So I think it's very, very interesting that feeling is actually associated with a really kind of a civil rights movement or an equality movement. Yeah. So we'll definitely come back to the foundations of that in after the Stonewall riots in '69 and all of that. But let's go back a step and talk about feeling so brilliant, because pride is one of the big 10 positive emotions.
Yes, absolutely. So the big 10 positive emotions comes from Barbara Fredrickson's research, and we define it as so brilliant in our feelings card. And pride we've renamed as satisfied. Now, why did we do that?
Yeah. So again, I think this is going to be really, really interesting as we talk about, is pride good or bad? So ultimately, from a psychology point of view, it's a positive emotion. So actually, again, back to Barbara Fredrickson, we're looking to have 3 positive emotions for every 1 negative. That's the good equation, right?
Right. And that is to balance out, right? In terms of like how it makes you feel.
Yeah. And I know I said last week, we don't like to call them good or bad or positive or negative, but that is how they have been researched as well. So what I think is interesting is we all have a different relationship with pride. And so for our coaching cards, we decided to go with the word satisfied, because really the definition of pride is a feeling of pleasure or celebration related to our accomplishments or efforts. And that's from Brène Brown. And so I think when you say satisfaction, I feel satisfied, I completed something, I accomplished something, people can really relate to that. And, our coaching cards are all about relatability. You want to have a feeling you can relate to. The word pride, unfortunately, definitely within the UK and Ireland, can have a lot of negative connotations, and people can be seen as being up themselves and too proud, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. That is certainly where I grew up in Manchester. You definitely say give someone a too proud would be, why don't you give yourself a chufty badge, mate?
Right. And there's a different word for that, Anirban.
Yes, that would be hubris.
Right.
Not something I was that familiar with, to be honest.
Yeah, so hubris is really interesting. Again, I don't feel like this is a word that is in common parlance. So we're really talking today about authentic pride, okay? Because hubris, or what did you say it was, chufty?
Chufty badge.
That to me is kind of like about dominance, about superiority, about being a bit up your own arse, I think we'd say in Ireland.
Literally.
Yeah. And actually, this is authentic pride that we're discussing today. And that is a sense of mastery, a sense of confidence and self-worth.
Yes. And I can go into self-pride about how I feel it. And the way I feel self-pride, certainly these days, I take a lot of self-pride in being a dad, being a parent, being an available parent. And I
would even say being a lead parent, actually.
Oh, right,
lead caregiver.
Yeah, I'm around a lot these days. And it's great, because I look after our daughter. I take her to school every day. I make her breakfast every morning. Everything from brushing her hair to helping her with her homework, even putting her earrings in, whatever it may be. There's a ton of stuff. I even was buying presents for her friend's birthday party last weekend.
You do that all the time, Anirban, and there's actually a name for that. It's called emotional labor. Tell me a little bit more about why it's really important to you to feel proud about taking on this mantle.
Yeah, well, so definitely it's important to me because I wasn't really around as much as I wanted to be when Nivani was very young. You essentially were the primary caregiver. I used to travel an awful lot with my corporate jobs. I used to travel to the US a lot or wherever it was. And I just wasn't here. I genuinely missed being a dad. And I thought it was unfair. So ultimately, that was a big part of the reason I quit the corporate world, was to be more present and available emotionally, as well as physically, being a dad in person and actually being on the ground. And, you know, I had to learn those skills of being a dad and being present. And I'm not just talking about, you know, doing the hair and all that stuff, but the emotional skills, being able to talk to my daughter about her feelings. And, you know, we sit with her with our emotions card and we go through our feelings together quite often. And it's brilliant that she can talk to me about whatever it is, issues she's got at school or with friends, but she's open. She can tell me that. It's not like, oh, I can't talk to you about it. I'll only tell mum about it type thing. So I'm really proud that I'm able to take some of that emotional labor. I take some of that burden too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that list you're talking about, that is our feeling cheat sheet, which is on the Insta and also on the website. Yeah. And once you put the cheat sheet in front of yourself, and this, I encourage everybody out there to use this. A lot of time people say to me, I can't express my feelings. That's why we have the cheat sheet. Honestly, give it a go. Put that in front of yourself, sit with yourself and check in and see, are you feeling pride? Are you feeling guilt or whatever you're feeling? And also you can use it in communication with other people. So the practice actually is called face to face, and you sit in front of somebody and you just use the feeling cheat sheet and you ask them how they feel. They tell you, and then you tell them how you feel, and then that's it. The end. With
no interrupting. That's a key part of it, right?
And I mean, you've heard us guys on this podcast. We interrupt each other on the podcast. Can you imagine what we're like in our personal lives? And also no judgment. Nothing. You just let the person express their feelings and then you express yours, and that's it. Takes about 5 minutes. So yeah, so that's a big one. So that's brilliant. So again, I think the really important message today from this is that pride is good. So authentic pride is good for you, actually.
Yes.
Acknowledging your achievements. You know, you don't have to downplay your achievements. And so I think, you know, questions that you could think about in relation to pride to help you with this would be, you know, what have I achieved? And who values this achievement? What exactly am I feeling proud about? Who's been praising me? And, you know, what can I take credit for? So I think, Anirban, if we come back to the idea of who values this achievement, is a very, very interesting one about pride, I think, because pride is cultural, right?
Definitely. Yeah. And in our culture, certainly as a British Asian, my mum often talked about being proud of ourselves, but typically with regard to our appearance. So it would to be always well turned out, always, clean and wearing kind of good clothes, should we say?
And is there a Bengali word for that, Anirban?
The Bengali word, yes, would be gorbo, which is literally pride, or gorbito, to wear something with pride. So I'd hear that quite a bit. We basically weren't allowed to, you know, go out in our pajamas or whatever. You'd have, or scrappy clothes. It would always be a sort of, dressed up appearance, polished shoes, the lot. And then obviously on our sort of, our Indian festival occasions, like a pujo or some sort of Diwali type occasion, we dress up, and it would be hard. I never felt comfortable wearing our sort of Asian clothes for obvious reasons. You know, growing up in Manchester, that racism was rife where I used to live in Greater Manchester. And it, just to look different was always kind of asking for trouble. And, I just wanted, usually we just wanted to blend in. So to look good and to have not something that you were going to get picked on about was key.
Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? So on the one hand, your parents want you to look really well turned out, and but you just want to be a normal kid and blend in.
Yeah. That was what it was all about.
And would you have felt a pride in your appearance?
Yeah, I guess in the clothes I wore, and even school uniform, my mum would often say the word prestige, and she'd never say that in Bengali, which I've now discovered is the word protopati.
Oh, that's a beautiful word. Say that again.
Protopati.
Protopati.
Yeah, it's hard for me to say as well. But mum would say prestige in English, so that was something she definitely would talk about, again, with regard to appearance.
Yeah, my mum would have said something similar. Have pride in yourself. Have you no pride in yourself wearing those ripped jeans?
Oh yeah, I remember we had ripped jeans.
Sure, my dad said that to me many times in the 90s.
Yeah, probably most teenagers, right?
Right, yeah.
So how about the word for pride in Irish?
So I feel proud in Irish is tá bród orm. And that's not to be confused with tá brón orm, which you hear very frequently. So tá brón orm, tá brón, I'm sorry. It's almost like excuse me. So this one is tá bród, B-R-O for the D. And you will actually now see this the same way you see pride here. So bród will actually be used, with the rainbow flag, and it will actually be used within the Gaeltacht communities and also other Irish state organisations that celebrate pride. Actually gay pride. So like I was saying before, we would use chuffed a lot. Chuffed is, I was chuffed to bits. I was chuffed about this. And that kind of translates as vi me sásta. So sásta would be satisfied. So again, I think there's something lovely about that I'm satisfied, sásta. It just really simplifies it. It takes it away from that kind of over prideful, overconfident thing. And then another phrase that we have in Ireland, which be, really commonplace, almost I'd say you'd find it in the Hiberno English now, would be bulabus.
Nice.
Which means, it's like a well done. It's like a clap. It means clap. So you'd almost have, bulabus to me, kind of.
Like a bravo.
A clap on the back.
Pat on the back.
Yeah.
Okay. Clap on the back. Very good.
Yeah, we would say clap on the back, actually.
All right. There you go. There's a translation.
Yeah. And then there's a couple of other phrases that I think are really, really good within the Irish language or Hiberno English, which we can put this in the show notes. It's an amazing dictionary that completely changed my world a while back, thanks to a blind boy. And so one of them is begrudger. So this is a phrase my dad would use a lot, to be a begrudger. So that's again, begrudging somebody.
Ah, yes.
Have you heard that phrase?
Oh, totally. Yeah. Begrudgingly.
Yeah. So we would say, feck the begrudgers.
Very good. I've not heard that. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, that is giving you permission to be proud. Feck the begrudgers. I feel great about this thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Do puff your chest out about it.
Yeah. So that's very, very common. And then actually in the Irish language, you would have this beautiful phrase, which is "Vi me cove pashta le cath shoppa."
Nice. What does that mean?
And that really just means, I'm really chuffed,
Cool.
And the direct translation is about the cat in the shop, like a kind of a, I think cats are often associated with pride, actually. Cats, they're just so
strutting around.
Yes, exactly. So there's a reference there to that, like the shop cat that just thinks it's the bee's knees, right?
Cool.
And again, we could bring in the bee's knees could be seen as a judgment. She thinks she's the bee's knees.
Yeah, judgmentally people say that. For sure.
Yeah, so the pride thing's very, very interesting. I think there's constantly this juxtaposition between, feeling proud of yourself, proud of other people. Pride there can be a family of pride, and then it actually going into a negative, right?
Yeah, there's definitely a balance here, especially in the UK, of being proud about something, but then definitely do not boast too much about it.
So another phrase that springs to mind from my mother actually is, pride before the fall. And actually this is, it comes from the Bible, I think, to be honest. It's that pride goeth before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall.
Wow. Well done.
I mean, I had to look that up because actually I wouldn't have known it from the Bible. My mother would just have said it very briefly. And it was this idea that if you were too confident, that it would lead to a setback or a failure. Which is kind of ridiculous, really, actually.
Right.
Yeah. So almost you could set yourself up to fall.
Right. Oh, Christ. Okay.
Yeah. So again, I think this is a very destructive way of seeing pride and not the way that we want to see pride. I think, authentic pride has an element of humility in it. Yeah. There's a beautiful phrase actually that Brène Brown comes up with when she talks about humility. And it is, I'm here to get it right, not to be right. And I think this is really, really fabulous way of seeing humility and pride. And so I would just like to actually say that's what we're doing on this show. We're not here to be right, No. We're trying to record the best possible podcast about feelings, explore them, as men and women today. And so we're not trying to be right. And so as you listen to this, you might have a completely different experience of pride, of humility. And so it's your authentic pride and your authentic experience and feelings. Just sit with that, because humility shows up differently for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess the current day equivalent of humility, or at least what we try and to be humble with, is posts on social media. We try and put out there what we're doing, maybe what we're proud of, with say a LinkedIn post, and you'll have your casual humble brag, shall we say.
Giving ourselves permission, Anirban, giving ourselves permission to be proud of our achievements. Yeah,
exactly. And that's what it is. That's what it feels like it is, for sure.
Another part of the pride kind of story or emotion is, what exactly you're feeling proud of. And it's really interesting that you spoke about work and prestige. And I think this brings us back to, a kind of a flawed sense of success within the UK and Ireland, and maybe even broader than here. I can't speak for other cultures, but that, that you can only feel proud if you've done something like absolutely extraordinary, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think what's really important is to go, we go back to values here. We're not going to cover values on this podcast, but there are coaching cards on that in our card pack. But another part of that to me is the sense of your pastimes, your hobbies. You see this in children so much. Children will feel proud when they finished a novel, when they've made a loom band, when they've done anything simple, and I feel any of our pastimes are hobbies. And again, hobbies is one of the cards in the pack where you start to think about, your achievements on a much simpler level. It just doesn't have to be you've made the C-level job, etc. And I think that's, again, if you're kind of thinking you're struggling with this positive emotion and going, well, I don't have anything to feel proud of, versus your older brother, versus a celebrity, versus the people you're following on Instagram, whoever, right? So actually, if you go back to your hobbies, you baked a lovely cake, you baked a loaf of bread, you cleaned out the hallway, you watered the plants, pride can be of really the basics.
You're right. Absolutely right. And definitely culturally here, I think, certainly my background, Asian culture, it's all about the pride in achievement, and usually it's either academic success or straight up fame. You've got to be put up there to be proud, so to speak. So, for example, when I was a kid, I was good at sports, and I think in the late 80s, when I was still quite young, I was probably 12 or something. I one sports day, I won 3 events. I won 3 medals, and what were
they on? What did you win?
I won 100 meters and the triple jump, and I brought the relay team home. So
And what year was this, Anirban?
I think it's 1989.
Okay.
So I was just in the first year of secondary school, and it felt amazing. It was an achievement I was proud of, shall we say. I personally was very proud of it. Still am. It was brilliant. But however, my mum and dad would be like, yeah, well done. Let's see if you can do as good in your exams this year, type thing. They couldn't care less about the sporting achievement unless I was going to be like Carl Lewis or something, right?
Yeah. It's like selective pride, isn't it? Like I was saying, that some things are valued more than others. And I think a lot of our stories, particularly Anirban sharing his story as our resident man with feelings, is that, you know, they come from our childhood, because a lot of our first emotional experiences stick with us, very, very strong memories. And I think what would be lovely just to kind of say to everyone who's listening is that you have a chance to reparent yourself, okay? A lot of us grew up with parents who were not emotionally flexible, who were not, you know, emotionally aware, who could not hold us in that space and meet us in that place. You know, they were good parents who provided in other ways. Yeah. And so if you find that when you go back to some of these emotions that we talk through over the coming weeks and they're kind of triggering or traumatic for you, you know, you can take the time to reparent yourself, and you can now allow yourself to feel pride over things that your parents didn't value, you know, but that you value. So I think self-pride is real. You know, reparenting yourself is actually a really great thing to do. And all of us can do this.
Yeah, I've got so many examples of my dad and my parents just not doing it right. So another one would have been, it's still with the appearance, you know. I think we turned up to my parents one time, I think you were there, and my dad essentially said, "Why haven't you shaved?" I was probably, 2 or 3 days unshaven, nothing in particular, no, like massive beard or anything. He said, "Why haven't you shaved?" And then sort of quietly whispered, you look like a terrorist. You know, not to stereotype or anything, but that is literally what he said. But that's the appearance. He's basically saying, you're brown, you don't want to be presenting yourself out there.
We understand where this come from. Your dad is trying to protect you.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah, and I can remember he would often take you aside and speak to you in Bengali and say something, and I wouldn't know what he said at the time, but it would be kind of a talking down to you, really.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. God, yeah. As an adult. I was literally an adult, but anyway, that still happens.
Dressing down, as we say, interestingly, isn't it? And again, literally. It's back to appearance.
Yeah, and another one would be recently, just very recently, remember at my dad's birthday dinner. And
your dad's 80th, which is a really big deal. Yeah.
And we asked him, what would have been his most joyous moment of the last 10 years. And my parents came out with, it was... my niece getting into Cambridge was their proudest moment. So not a joyous moment, but a moment of pride, interestingly.
And what's kind of cool about that story is when we say that pride is a positive emotion, yes, it is. And, that's beautiful. Like, he's obviously really proud of his niece. And I mean, again...
His granddaughter.
Oh, my niece. Your niece. Sorry. Yeah, Olivia.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's kind of... So again, it can be absolutely a really great feeling. And to be proud of other people, I was always proud of us for the first 3 or 4 years in Ravani that we kept her alive. And if there's any parents out there that have small children, you know what I'm talking about, right? You kept sane and kept them alive. That was like an achievement.
Yes,
and now I would have pride about Nirvani about lots of other things. But I would have a lot of self-pride. I mean, I definitely think growing up in my home, there was a sense of joyousness about pride. I mean, there was those little quips and those little sayings that I've said to you. But I think I did grow up in a house that had pride. Certainly was one of the feelings that was more permitted. Certainly more permitted than maybe anger or sadness, And I think, I feel that we were honoured. Yeah, what our achievements were honoured, definitely in my home.
So let's take it back to where we started at the beginning of the podcast, and we mentioned the LGBTQI community. It's something we're very close to. We, in fact, our company logo, the Future Now logo, is based on using the Gilbert Baker font, which is one of the few coloured fonts out there. And that inspired us to create our logo.
Who is Gilbert?
Gilbert Baker, if you didn't know, is the guy who designed the original rainbow flag, the pride flag.
Ah, right. Lovely, Anirban. Yeah, and actually this is lovely because a little bit of history here. So I was saying, why is the word pride associated with that community? And I think the main thing is this sense of like equality, absolutely, that I have every reason to feel as proud as anyone for who I am. And let me get out and show you how good I feel about myself. And it is a puffing out of chests and a dressing up and all the rest. And having gone to so many gay prides over the years, Berlin, Paris, Dublin, London, Boston,
I've been to the Manchester one.
Yeah, amazing celebration.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, and I think that sense of pride when you hold yourself upright, when your head is held high, when you smile, when your arms are open. And, Laura Bates said something really interesting where she said, change is a very interesting word, but change and awareness are not the same thing. And I think now we have a great awareness of gay pride, right?
Yeah.
That, every company in the world that you can think of has incorporated the rainbow flag. But awareness is not change. And Anirban has touched on racism and, homophobia is still an issue within the UK and Ireland and, and other countries as well. So I think it's very important to go that, we haven't achieved the end result, right?
Yeah. Awareness is great, but there's still action to be taken. So whether it's pride in your gender identity, your cultural background, or your achievements, Barbara Fredrickson's Love 2.0 has a lot to say about that.
Yeah, that's an amazing book. And I think ultimately that's where all this positive psychology research is based on. And ultimately is that we want to up our positive emotions, and pride is a positive emotion. And let's take back ownership of pride. If you're listening to this and you have been, what was that amazing saying you said, Anirban, from Manchester?
Why don't you give yourself a chufty badge, mate?
Yeah. So whether you've come from a background where people made you feel bad about being proud, let's take that back. Let's increase our positive emotions, and hopefully you'll be able to notice, when you feel proud, and just sit with it yourself and go, I feel proud when.
Pride is so important because of the broaden and build theory, which is broadening your mind and building on your resourcefulness.
It makes all those connections. So when you experience positive emotions, and we will cover these over the many weeks to come, it actually makes you notice connections. It makes you figure things out. When you're in that frame of mind, when you're experiencing a positive emotion, everything seems better. And they have research that literally, your brain is connecting and finding and working in your favor. So that's why it is really important to actually feel proud and to notice it, because not only for how you feel now in the moment, but it will have long lasting impacts on you. So to practice pride on a daily basis, to make it a habit or a
habit. Yeah, definitely. That's why we've got our So Brilliant card. And as we say, sticky, sweet, repeat.
And this is going out to you on the 30th of June. So if you want to get your pride on, and if you want to fly the flag for the gay community, that tomorrow, the 1st of July, is Gay Pride in London. So that could be a lot of fun if you haven't had a chance to go out and support that community, or if you're a member of that community, I'm sure you know what's going on. Anyway, I will say goodbye for now. Slán go fóill. So
remember to feel it to reveal it. And in next week's podcast, we'll be diving into anger. Tak go hobe. See you next week.